Hey everyone, today is April 22nd, 2020. This means it's the 50th birthday of the Earth Day. And this year's theme is called Climate Action, which is why we have a special guest with us on our channel. Her name is Karin Kirk. She is a climate educator, a geologist, a professional freelance science writer, and a professional skier. So, Karen is a regular contributor at the Yale Climate Connections, which helps people understand how the changing climate is already affecting our lives and focuses on constructive solutions to help solve the climate crisis. So, Karen will be with us talking about the connection between the coronavirus pandemic and climate change. And I had a really insightful and interesting conversation with her. So, I hope you enjoyed and gained a lot from it. So, here we go. Let's hear from Karen.
What have you learned regarding our unintentional climate mitigation in this pandemic?
That's the perfect description. First of all, it's really tentative because no one knows exactly where we are on this curve. Obviously, the curve for the first time in a long time is going sharply down. The curve meaning fossil fuel consumption and therefore greenhouse emissions. Projections across all sectors of the fossil fuel industry, well, except for natural gas, but overall are down. Oil, liquid fuel is in particular trouble because it has two problems at once. The demand for oil has all but dried up. I mean, it's gone down by about a third in just a couple of weeks. And it's such a big and complicated industry that causes huge problems throughout the supply chain. And then at the same time, they have this pricing problem, the drop in prices. And so it's a huge sort of shockwave through the industry, much lower demand. Coal is similarly tanking for a different reason. So electricity demand is lower, but not a ton lower. So the main problem for the fossil fuel industry is transportation. So liquid fuel, so jet fuel and gasoline and diesel. So those are the ones that are down a lot. But electricity is down because schools, offices, manufacturing, not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the demand gets lower, the utilities then have it pretty easy to meet demand, and they have their choice of how they want to meet demand. They could use coal or gas or renewables. And coal is the most expensive part of most energy portfolios. Mm-hmm. So since they don't have to work that hard to reach the demand, they will not use the most expensive parts, obviously.
Right.
So coal has this like double whammy, like demand is down and then utilities won't use it right now. So for the US, the projection is for April, coal use will decline by 30%.
30% compared to last year?
Yep, compared to April.
Wow,
2000, like
30%. Okay, I mean, that's a good thing. So, yeah.
That's a weird thing about this topic. You're like, yay.
Right.
Sorry, but yay.
Yeah. Climate-wise. Right.
So natural gas, though, but compared to last year, April, has gone up by 8%.
Okay.
So, but to put that in a context, natural gas is what's replacing coal by and large. Renewables are as well. So natural gas is on this big upswing. So in the context of that, 8% is actually a little bit of a decline in the inside of that large.
I see. Okay.
So, but then the really good thing is renewables are also on a big upswing, even a bigger upswing maybe than gas. And so looking at April last year and this April, both wind and solar each are projected to go up by 20%.
By 20%, okay. Wow.
20%. So, and that's for two reasons. That's because it's increasing, like more capacity is being built all along. And the opposite of what's happening with coal. So as a utility is managing their grid, they're going to pick the cheapest ones first. And renewables are the cheaper ones. And so those are being used where they can be. And then the fossil fuels are only going to fill in, behind. So,
okay.
So that's good. And that'll be fairly permanent, as they add capacity, that capacity is staying. And as they can manage the grid using the cheaper resources, like that wouldn't change either. And so that's good news that will stick. And
wow.
Coal is just on a decline. There's nothing really that can be done to save that. But it'll probably come back somewhat.
Somewhat, okay.
But yeah. So does that make sense in terms of
absolutely. Absolutely makes sense. My questions were, if the pandemic didn't happen, how much do you think, or is there a study, a number saying how much the coal would decline if there was no shutdown? And if there was no shutdown, would the renewables rise as rapidly?
Right. In general, yes to both, because you can look at the trend before this, and the
Mhm.
renewables are just up and up and up, in part because they're cheap,
Cheap. Yeah.
really mostly because they're cheap. And coal is down and down and down, mostly because it's expensive. And so that's been going on for years already.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so this just kind of
Accelerated.
both of them. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're both going in the right direction. It's just a matter
Right
of
direction.
can they go fast enough?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so the big change right now with the
Mhm.
pandemic is transportation. Is
Okay.
that the fact that we're not that there's empty airplanes and very few airplanes.
Mhm.
The roads are empty, and the same thing you see with all this air pollution being gone. You can see
Right. Down.
it's like,
Yeah.
so that's directly tied to the drop in
Mhm.
transportation. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the numbers. Jet fuel is down by around half. And
Wow.
and these are
Half. Okay.
projections for April. Yeah. And then like gasoline is down like in 30 something percent. So
30%. Okay.
yeah. So, and like in that one, if you wanted to imagine the future, we could, we can replace that with electric vehicles. So,
Mhm.
that's a place where we could replicate this exact scenario with changing our infrastructure and still have the clean air
Yeah.
and still have the lower emissions, but
Right.
we would have the advantage of being able to go places. so,
Definitely.
so it is interesting to use what's going on now and like use it as a little bit of a crystal ball of like, what would it be
Mhm.
like? And it is, as much as I acknowledge the grief of the situation, it is kind of a cool like mathematics exercise to just say, well, like, how does that, where would this put us in the future? And is this enough
Absolutely.
to catch us up with
Absolutely.
the drawdown that we need to do?
Nice. That's awesome. So the other question is, how much of these changes do you think will be long term? Because I've read that China, in fact, in the first 3 months of this year, decreased about 250 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is 18% below last year. But
Right.
most climate scientists expect China to like double back down on their economy and that will increase pollution even more. So
Right.
because of our unintentional actions, how much do you think is long term versus short
I hate to be pessimistic, but
term?
I don't think it's going to be long term because
No.
China, I mean, then again, the numbers like every day, it's funny. I have all these tabs
Yeah.
open and I just refresh, and
Okay.
all different energy analysts because they change that fast.
Hmm.
China's already gone back up, like coal power plants have already
Yeah.
gone back up to within their sort of normal range.
Right.
Um, so darn it. So it was like this fleeting window, and of course, the same thing will happen here. But you look at all this like angst for getting the economy going, and for the most part, economy equals energy use.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
answer to climate change can never be stay home, don't drive.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Yeah.
don't try.
It's
I
not
can
gonna
never,
happen.
and that's like a dangerous thing with our messaging. You have people saying, "Oh, well, here we go. We should just do this in perpetuity." It's like that's a really terrible message for
Yeah.
politically and like for humanity. We can't do
Hmm.
that. So yeah, so China bounced back up. We will bounce back up. So we still got to focus on green infrastructure and changing the
The infrastructure.
sources of energy rather than making everyone have no life.
Totally.
That cannot be the answer.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you think climate action can be sustainable within this kind of economy, which focuses on growth, GDP growth forever? Like it's
Right.
not considering like economic growth is not equal to environmental sustainability at this moment.
No.
But do you think considering the same paradigm, long-term changes can be still made?
I definitely think they can be made because we're
Hmm.
already making them. The key problem is it's too slow.
Yeah.
So we've used up all of the time that we had.
Hmm.
I have a lot of like unpleasant feelings about why that is in terms of these very political and
Yeah.
sort of ideological and also, certain economic forces, fossil fuel industry, holding back the tide. And unfortunately, we lost all of our buffer because of that. And now when you look at the curves of where we need to be, like whether it's 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees, and then you look at the path we're on, it's just, the two don't match. It just doesn't seem doable. And that's the part that's really discouraging. So it's like, yay, solar's going up and wind is going up and coal is declining. That's great, but it can't be fast enough at this point. So that's the part that I'm an optimistic person, but this week when I've been looking at these numbers, and it's like, well, look at where our emissions are, where they might be at the end of 2020. Does that put us ahead of the curve? The answer is no. It puts us only on the curve. It doesn't even put us ahead. So
wow.
well, this doesn't put us ahead. I didn't intend to write an article, but the math, that's why the math is always an interesting way to look at problems. Because you think, oh, this is great. We can see the mountains. Like, we're problem solved. And then you look at the math and you're like, nope.
No.
That isn't enough. But let me dive into that a little bit, because
please.
It's pretty detailed. So if you look at the expectations for the whole year, for the whole world, for the whole year for 2020, it's looking like emissions, and again, this is from only where we are right now, but emissions might be down for the globe somewhere between 5 and 6%. If we want to stay on the 1.5 degree curve, so keeping warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we have to reduce by 7.5% every year. And this year, with all this like terrible stuff going on, it's only 5 or 6%.
Whoa! But this is globally 7.5%, or just the U.S.
Globally. Yeah.
So with everything, it's just
still not enough.
That's
a terrible message.
Whoa!
Isn't that awful? Yeah. I mean, I don't ever like to spread bad news, because it just bums everyone out and it makes it so that it's hard to like figure out what to do next. It does put us, if you look at the 2 degree curve, 1 year ahead. That's it.
1 year ahead.
It puts us where we need to be, like in 2021. But
I see.
Still, that's fair. And then as things rebound, we're going to come right off that curve again.
Right off the curve. Yeah.
It's
wow. Okay.
I know. It's really discouraging. But I think, again, because we have this window of like, oh, here's what a cleaner world looks like. It's still a really, really useful insight that we have, even though then you think, okay, this is only going to get us part of the way. It sort of helps you really internalize the scale of change that's needed and the speed of the change. And that's why earlier I'm saying, like, yeah, great, coal's going down and renewables are going up. It's not enough, not fast enough.
Won't do much.
Yeah. So it's a discouraging message. I apologize for that.
No, this is great information. So before I ask another question, what are some of your sources, so our viewers and myself, we can, experiment with this and look it up? And
yeah, sure. I love the EIA, Energy
Information
Administration. I do, and I spend days and weeks just thumbing through that data.
Okay.
Because it's like a little classic government website. It's sort of dry, but it's all there, and you can dig and dig and dig. So I use that for this country, and then for international stuff, there's lots of different analysts. The International Energy Agency and the Global Carbon Project. Carbon Brief. Yeah, Carbon Brief is doing really good, like very quick analyses of emissions. So Carbon Brief came up with the number that China's emissions temporarily dropped by 25%, which is phenomenally huge, but then rebounded.
Yeah.
And then this will all be, this will be in an article that I'm writing for Yale Climate Connections that should be out in about a week or two. So
awesome.
And I worry that by the time the article comes out, the numbers will change. So
change.
You got to draw a line in the sand somewhere.
Wow. Maybe you can put a note saying, this is in change, and
Well, when I'm looking at other articles, they're all saying the same thing, and they'll say, we're going to get this updated. That's why I refresh them each day, because they have changed. And they've changed in a kind of good direction, in that the numbers, the decline of fossil fuels keeps getting larger.
So the follow-up question is, what would a world look like? Let's say there is no pandemic; it's a normal year, and
Yeah.
what would we need to do yearly to get that 7.5% reduction, or even 5 to 6? Like this is ambitious right now, but that's not enough. So
Yeah.
what would a day-to-day lifestyle look like, and how would it change if we need to reduce our emissions accordingly?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can only offer a part of one answer because I don't know that anyone really has the answer to that.
Yeah,
But it's, build renewable energy capacity,
absolutely.
figure out energy storage in every way that we can, whether it's pumped hydro and hydrogen and syngas and all of those things. Like that's a really important, so far sort of missing component. I'd love to see some stimulus money go to that because
Mhm.
the people that figure that out are going to be super wealthy. It's
Yeah,
really needed and it's not quite there yet. So it's a big opportunity, and I
gotcha.
think Americans are good at that. And then moving things to more electric. So if we
Mhm,
can make, the better we can make clean electricity, the easier we can make everything else electric. So cars
mhm,
and heat and whatever else we can,
mhm.
industrial processes. Taking that thermal part of the equation, we do so much
Yeah,
by burning things.
yeah.
So taking away the thermal and building on other forms of
Mhm,
energy. Um, so that's what it looks like to me. That's a long process. And then there's parts along the way. I think there's things we can do to speed it up. My favorite is just to stop subsidizing fossil fuels.
oh, absolutely.
And the fact that fossil fuels so far have not gotten big parts of the stimulus is encouraging. Like,
Mm,
we'll see what happens as we go through next phases of the
yeah.
stimulus, but they have really gotten a lot of taxpayer money and done a lot of damage to humans. They've
Mhm,
also done a lot of
mhm.
good, but the time is up for
Yeah,
subsidizing that. And then,
yeah.
more public investment in these things like making the grid greener and
Mhm,
energy storage and all those other things,
mhm.
put stimulus money there, um,
Nice.
move things, innovate, be clean, create jobs,
Yeah.
make America competitive and as
Mhm,
energy changes. I mean, they're pretty nice solutions. I mean, they're
mhm,
pretty
mhm.
easy to agree with. And
Yeah,
most people do.
most people
So,
do. Yeah.
So I hope you really enjoyed this conversation and gained some useful information. We're going to continue this podcast with Karen explaining how we can become real change makers and help create a better future. So please subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more, and share this video with your friends, and please help spread the word. Comment your thoughts, and I will see you next time very soon. Bye.